Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Delgado. I'm the sales director here at Kavaliro for our Salesforce practice. First off, I want to thank you and welcome you to today's Salesforce Billing workshop. We're going to go through a variety of different use cases today. We're going to allow you to get hands-on with Salesforce Billing, which is really exciting, really awesome. And we're going to go through a few exercises, everything from product catalogs and Salesforce Billing to credit memos. So why don't we jump to the next slide? This will go to about 1:30 Eastern time today. We should be able to use up that time and save some time at the end for some additional questions. Leading you through this conversation today, we got a great team in front of us. First and foremost is Ricardo Suscum. He is our billing director here at Kavaliro. And then to provide additional support, we have Bryce Baker, who's the Vice President of Sales and Delivery at Kavaliro. And then we also have Principal Solution Engineer from Salesforce, Yuva Pemasani, joining the team today. And then to provide additional support, we also have Hannah Graves, who is a CPQ and billing consultant here at Kavaliro, as well as Heather Sosby, who's our director of CPQ. And then you've already met me, Eric Delgado, and my colleague, my counterpart, Miguel Boland, is also on the call. So just kind of set the stage a little bit. What we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to quickly go through a high-level overview of who is Kavaliro, why are we qualified to be talking to you today about Salesforce Billing and running you through this. And then beyond that, we'll get into a little bit about why Salesforce Billing, what does that mean? Why Salesforce Billing is the leading cloud-based billing solution out there. And then the bulk of today's conversation is going to be that hands-on component, allowing you to get your fingertips onto Salesforce Billing and go through some unique use cases. All right, so a little bit about Kavaliro. Kavaliro has been around since 2010. We were founded in 2010, primarily at the beginning, a workforce solutions organization. Over the past few years, we've developed an awesome Salesforce practice with a major focus in Salesforce Revenue Cloud, CPQ, and billing. We are a Salesforce certified billing partner. We also sit on the Salesforce Revenue Cloud Advisory Board, and that means that we actually have a hand and a say in how the product is developed. We take customer feedback, we take feedback from our experiences in working with clients and working with the product day to day, and help Salesforce make their decisions going forward on enhancements for the product and how they want to make things better. Beyond that, I always like to throw out there that there's no better reference than Salesforce. If you're familiar with Salesforce's Ventures group, that's their internal purchasing group. Kavaliro was the partner who was selected to implement CPQ and billing for Salesforce themselves. It was really exciting for us, really exciting for Salesforce. And, if there's ever an opportunity to leverage Salesforce themselves as a reference to a prospective Salesforce customer, well, it doesn't get any better than that. So a little bit beyond that about what we do. We do everything from advisory. We do, health check for your Revenue Cloud instance if you already have it. If you're looking into Salesforce solutions, if you want to go through your current billing process, we can get into some advisory there because obviously this is transformational growth for your organization. Then we get into the implementation where we get actually hands-on. We build out your solution to fit your business case and set you up for the future. And then finally, we have a managed services group internally for that support beyond your implementation. And with that, I will turn it over to Bryce Baker.
So just to talk about a little bit about Salesforce Billing for those of you that have not seen it or heard it, Salesforce Billing is a piece of Revenue Cloud. Many of you are probably familiar at this point with Salesforce CPQ. Salesforce Billing is kind of the engine that allows for billing, for invoicing. It can power all the way through revenue if it needs to. The big piece and the big highlight here is basically extends the story of Customer 360 flow within Salesforce. I know we use the term lead to revenue pretty often, but the tool itself, beyond the technology, is really bridging sales and finance departments together with process that kind of encourages collaboration and governance, especially on a single platform as a source of truth. Those of you that have worked in sales or finance for quite some time probably understand that the industry has previously held these two things apart, both in process and in different systems altogether. So this is pretty crucial for the development of the business world, as we've already seen sales operations and finance operations evolve into new roles like revenue operations, which is really seeing the process, the full journey of how that goes through. So the big element to Salesforce Billing, the big power even behind the technology is creating this unification of those two departments, creating this collaboration and breaking down those silos.
All right, perfect. Let me adjust some screens here. And just reshare. All right, perfect. Thanks, Bryce. I'm going to go ahead and take it over from here and go ahead and launch our Salesforce Billing workshop. As Eric's already alluded to, my name is Ricardo Swescom, one of the solution architects here at Kavaliro. I'll be guiding you through your Salesforce or this Salesforce Billing workshop. My co-pilot Hannah, she'll be here as well to help provide some context around the features and functions that we'll go over. Along that, we'll also provide some best practices. So with that, like every good demo, let's go ahead and get logged in. You should have already got your credentials and you should be ready to roll. Hopefully, we should be ready to plug in. And if you don't already have it, I believe it's in the chat. This link that we're going to plug into a new tab. So I've already logged in, as you can see. I'm going to go ahead and authenticate the CPQ calculator here. Should tell me that it's time for some happy quoting. And as this is spinning, classically. Cool, we've got it. All right, so I'll head back to my homepage here on the Salesforce Billing. Just like it says, we're going to go to our Q2C demo setup. That refresh billing button up in the top right-hand corner should be available to you all. If you haven't already, go ahead and click it now. And we're just going to wait, just like it says, for that button to go ahead and gray out for us. I've already done my time zone changes, just so you, and in case you guys haven't already, it is going to be something you're not going to want to mess with later, especially when we're setting up our invoice schedule or trying to figure out the difference in time zones. So if you want to go ahead and skip to step 7 while this is doing its refresh. All right. So just a quick overview, right? We've already done our login. We're going to go right into our scenario and talk about some of our product catalog and how that applies to Salesforce Billing. So in good classic Salesforce scenario, Ohana Inc., it's a software company. They want to diversify their revenue streams. Ultimately, they're looking for that ability to access their product catalog and expand their offering. Of course, they've got years of frustrating disparate systems. So I'm just going to quickly go over to one of our products and explain how we can expand and be able to not only take it from general kind of opportunity setup, but all the way down to those financing attributes that Bryce had talked about earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and look for that 200 gig iCloud storage. If this is your first time in Salesforce, you can just go ahead and click in here and search the list. I'm going to go ahead and type in 200. I'm going to go ahead and click into my product. Then I'm going to spend some time talking about the different billing configuration you'll see here with Salesforce. With Salesforce. Some of the questions we like to ask around the products: how do you sell them? Or excuse me, how do we charge for them? Meaning, is this going to be a one-time setup fee? Is it just an asset? Is it a subscription where we're going to set up some recurring charges against? Is this a product that needs to end up on an invoice? Which leads me into our billing rule. Billing rule generally is going to house whether or not that product is going to be invoiced. Along with the billing rules, we have some tax rules and some revenue recognition rules. These are basic standard setups within Salesforce that they've already provided. Anything advanced aside from with respects to tax, you're definitely going to want a package like Avalara or Vertex. Anything more advanced than what's already provided around revenue recognition, you're definitely going to want something like write code. So we're going to go find our generate invoice billing rule here. Just like I said already, really this is the crux of whether or not this product associated to this rule is going to be invoiced. Now, once that's invoiced, how are we going to treat it? Meaning, which finance books is this going to apply to? Perhaps there's some custom billing frequency around maybe like a milestone billing. We can also use our billing treatments to define some of those milestone billings if you so choose. So I'm going to go find my billing treatment here. And if you notice, just quickly at a glance, you've got your billing rule, a couple of billing treatments, your billing finance books, and the billing legal entities. At the end of the day, all of this is being, is being matched based on that legal entity on the order product. We'll get into the order product here in a moment, but really the foundation of any good CPQ or billing implementation is definitely going to be our product catalog. So I'm going to go into the treatment real quick. You'll notice here that we've got a finance book that these products are going to be charged to. Of course, I've got my legal entity, which I've already pointed out. And then I'll go into my invoice GL rule so you can see the different treatments that this is going to be applied to. Again, this treatment is matched based on legal entity. And then you can also set up the different credit and debit accounts within Salesforce Billing to see those transactions occur around your journal runs at the end of the month. Savvy. All right, so I'm going to head back to our PowerPoint here, go into our second scenario. All right, so now we're going to get into the CPQ piece. They've already added CPQ, as we've alluded to earlier. We're going to go ahead and complete a new sale using CPQ, and I'll stop along the way to talk about how our products and orders, quotes, quote lines, and order products all are relevant and relate to each other. All right, so I'm going to go into my accounts. Should be looking for 123 warehousing here at the top. We'll find the single opportunity that should be in our related list. We're going to go ahead and set this to close long. Now, there's some automation already set up here to generate an order. Out of the box, Salesforce Billing, Salesforce does not have that automation where it's actually checking the order checkbox for you. That is a piece of Salesforce CPQ where it helps generate basically these quote lines, quote attached to that quote into an order and subsequently order products. All right, so I'm going to jump right into our order. And I probably just want to go ahead and activate this right away, right, Hannah?
No, you're actually not going to, is not recommended to activate this right away. So as Ricardo was just mentioning, you can set up automation, on the opportunity to go ahead and create your order. You can automatically create it as an activated order, but it is not recommended to do so, just for a pure reason of it is best practice to have a quality gate right there before you go ahead and activate that order. This order, up until this point, we've been going through CPQ and the selling process. This order kind of marks the beginning and is the foundation for billing. So Salesforce Billing will continually refer back to this order and its order products to determine how those products are going to be billed over the course of its subscription. So no, we don't like to go ahead and activate that unless there is no need for any changes on the order, then go ahead and activate it. But sometimes clients like to adjust the start date right before they need to activate the order. If you go ahead and activate the order, you can adjust the start date. So think of activating the order as setting the order, like setting it in stone. This is going to now be what billing basis it off of. If you need any changes, you make them now in draft.
Perfect. Yeah, as Hannah's already talked about, really this transition from CPQ to billing in the form of an order is that formal handoff from sales to provision, sales to fulfillment. That process isn't always as seamless in the real world, and most times needs a little adjustments here and there. So obviously, we've always liked to take a little bit of time, view this, make sure this is correct before we move forward with any further action. So I'm going to go ahead and activate this in the good spirit of a demo and just follow along here. I also need to go ahead and set the invoice batch to batch 3, which I'll let Hannah discuss here in a moment. And I'm going to go ahead and activate this. So since this is June 20th, we've activated this order on the 20th day of the month. We should see our billing day of the month. It's inherited. These payment terms come from the quote. So they are going to influence our invoice due dates when we do generate an invoice. This next step around the bill now is not generally what we would say, and on every demo, we would probably tell you, don't use it, but we'd use it just for the purpose of a demo. The reason we tell you not to use it is because there's another feature called an invoice scheduler, which is much more automated and will actually pick up all the orders as opposed to just this one order and creating an invoice for a singular order where we can consolidate orders with the invoice scheduler. So I'm going to go ahead and use that bill now so we can create our first invoice. While it's creating there in the background, I'm going to go into one of our order products or hover over our order products and just talk about a couple of the fields there. Okay, so we've got our product, which is what we started this entire demo with. Talked about that, the configuration there at the product level, and subsequent quote line and order product. You should see some information here around billing frequency, billing type, next billing, and you'll notice that for 5 of those lines, completely blank. Simply, there is no billing frequency or billing type. Frequency meaning monthly, quarterly, annually. Billing type, advanced arrears, for anything that we have set up where charge type equals one time. One time, we're going to be charging this on the very next invoice whenever this invoice does get created, which we've gone ahead and created it today. Okay, so let's go take a look at our invoice. You also notice that Bill Now checkbox should have unchecked automatically. That is on purpose. And it is just set there so that you can kind of reset. And if you do need to charge this order again, you can use that box, right? All right, so if you can try to put together some of the different, I guess, pieces or relationships around Salesforce billing, meaning we started with a quote. That quote was comprised of quote lines. Once we've moved past that period and we're now into provisioning, we've turned it into an order with order products. That order, potentially several orders, will turn into an invoice and several invoice lines. So you'll notice here that I've got the order already set for my lookup to this invoice. That is only going to occur whenever we use that bill now. Generally, what we would see with an invoice run populated here as the lookup, which is again alluding to that invoice schedule that Hannah's going to walk us through here in a little bit. So I'm going to hover over our invoice lines related list. And we can quickly take a glance at the total amounts, the balances for all of these. You'll notice that those $0 are components of that MacBook Pro. They are not to be charged, right? Because they make up the subtotal for our MacBook Pro. Aside from that, you'll just see that our invoice is set automatically to draft. So for this to actually be ready for any sort of payment, to be able to receive a payment, we're going to need to post this at some point. You also see the balance and any payments that could be made to this, some credits and debits, which we'll get into a little bit later as well. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and click this button here, View Invoice. This is a nice feature that Salesforce has gone and set up for us in these demo orgs. There's lots of options to display, deliver your templates, anywhere from your quotes to your actual invoices, Conga, DocuSign, amongst a few. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and click the back arrow. In case you didn't notice, I didn't go up to the top, but I did just hit back on my mouse. But I'm going to go ahead and complete this by now posting my invoice. So we should be at task 6 of 6. I'm just going to go ahead and hit draft and post. This should automatically go from post to in progress. Post in progress. Give it a minute, refresh the page, and it should say posted. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah for running through our third exercise.
All right. So just as Ricardo just went over and walked us through using the bill now, I'm going to go ahead and steal the screen from you, Ricardo. All right. So here we are on the order. This is the checkbox that we just used under the billing information section on our order. Emphasizing again, we do not recommend using bill now for your everyday scenario, and we recommend using the invoice scheduler, which I'm about to show you, for the reason that the order kind of is viewed as almost like a basket holding all of the order products. An order to an invoice isn't necessarily a one-to-one scenario. So this invoice scheduler that I'm about to set up, the invoice scheduler in Salesforce Billing, will solely look at the order products and not the order to see which order products can be grouped onto which invoices. So you could have various amounts of order products coming from different orders landing on one invoice. Or in the same scenario, you could have order products from the same order ending up on different invoices. So they aren't necessarily one-to-one, and that's kind of what the invoice scheduler helps you do. With this bill now checkbox, this will be kind of used in any ad hoc scenarios. If you need to bill something, a mistake was made and something needs to be billed right now, then you can use this bill now checkbox. And as you saw, there were 7 order products on this order. And on that invoice that we just created, there were 7 invoice lines for each of those order products. So using that bill now checkbox does produce an invoice, but only an invoice for all of those order products on that order. So if you have any invoice grouping that's necessary for your business use case, that is not going to happen using the bill now checkbox. So with that said, I will go over to invoice scheduler here. All right, so we're going to set up a new invoice scheduler. I'll call it my invoice run. And this is just going to be a one-time. So notice the different types here. You can set them up daily, weekly, or monthly. For our case here, we're just going to use it once. I'll go over really quickly in the case that you want to use it as a recurring invoice scheduler, which is our most common use case in a business, because they would like the invoices to be produced automatically at the first of the month, or let's say every Monday. You would want to use the weekly or the monthly configuration. So if I selected weekly, They represent the days of the weeks as numbers. If you hover over here, it says Sunday is 1. So let's say I want to run it every Tuesday. I'll say, okay, this is Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'll select 3 as the day of the week, and this will be set up to run every week on Tuesday. Likewise, for month configuration, you just select the day of the month that you would like. A lot of people go with the 1st or the 15th of the month, depending on what the business use case is here. So for our purposes for this workshop, it's a one-time scheduler. We're going to select invoice batch 1, 2, 3, and 4. Our start time we're going to use today. I've already adjusted. This is kind of where making sure that you adjusted your time zone in the beginning of this would be helpful because I'm going to set this to run 2 minutes from now. So if right now it's 12:31 Eastern, I'll say 12:33. And then we're going to set the target date to the end of the year. And we're going to set invoice date to the end of the year. So I'll probably adjust this time, but I just want to take a moment to talk about target date and invoice date really quickly. They are different and they do mean different things. So as far as target date, this is what Salesforce Billing is going, or this invoice scheduler is going to look at the order product's next billing date. So I have that order still pulled up over here. If we go and just look at this order product, this is where a lot of important fields are for billing, and this is what the invoice scheduler is going to look at. So it is going to look at the next billing date. This might not be the best order to use. Okay, let me use the recurring one. So there we go. So this order product has a next billing date of 7/20/2023. The target date on the invoice scheduler for any order products that you're going to pick up needs to be greater than the next billing date on the order product. So notice how we set on the invoice scheduler as the end of the year as the date. You may want to set that as like end of the month to make sure you pick up all of June's order products that need to be billed, or set it at the end of July for all of July's order products that need to be billed. But for the purpose of this workshop, we're just setting it to the end of the year just to be sure that we gather all order products that need to be billed, because there are other orders in our workshop org. So gathering all order products that need to be billed and landing them on their respective invoices. If you need to override the next billing date, or you need to change the next billing date, it is not best practice to use this next billing date field. It is best practice to use the override field in anything that you're needing to change on these already activated, ready to go order products. So use these override next billing dates to not interfere with the kind of natural process of Salesforce Billing. I'm going to go back to my invoice scheduler over here. I'm going to adjust the time since I was talking. And I'll just say for 36. Invoice date is going to be the date that shows up on the actual invoice. So this invoice date is going to say invoice date 12/31/2023. And if our payment terms are net 30 for these order products, then it's going to have a due date 30 days after the 12/31/2023. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Also, you can automatically post invoices. Same caveat here for the post invoices goes for the activating the orders automatically. Once you post the invoices, there's not much you can do to change the information on the invoices if you needed to adjust some information. Once you post those invoices, you're going to have to follow through with like a cancel and rebill process. There's no such thing as really deleting records in Salesforce Billing. I'll click save. All right, so this invoice scheduler is going to run in a little under a minute. Over here is where you'll see the invoice runs associated with it. Because it's a one-time invoice run, you're going to see the one invoice run. If this was something that you set up for a client to be recurring every month, then you would see, and let's say something went wrong, you can go and click on the most recent invoice run or whatever the invoice run for that month or week was, and check the error logs. attached to the invoice run, but we will wait here. You can also use, while we're waiting, something else that's helpful to call out is there is the invoice group ID. So if I go back to the order, so we can set our invoice grouping based off of our billing account. Let's say that's what you would use if the account that is on your order is not. So if, let's say, 123 Housing has a parent account that should be taking over the bill, that's when we would want to use a billing account. So let's say we have a 123 warehousing parent account. That's something that we can put in this billing account, and that is the account that'll end up on the invoice. So that's in the scenario that the account that is going to be ordering it is not the one that's going to be picking up the bill. All right, I'm going to go back over to my invoice run and see if it got started. All right. It looks like it made it all the way through, and we have 6 invoices that are produced. All right, and then I will pass it back over to Ricardo to go for exercise 4.
Thanks, Hannah. All right, perfect. So for exercise 4, as another feature of Salesforce Billing, we're going to go ahead and process a payment for those invoices that we went ahead and created. A couple ways to do this within Salesforce Billing Payment Center. We're going to go ahead and utilize that function today. There are payment gateways that you can use, several. You can look them up. I'm sure there's a plethora of them. We're going to go in here to our account. I'm going to click on our payment center here in the top right. This will take a moment to load. Perfect. You should have only one option here. You're going to go ahead and click Pay by Invoice and then click Next in the bottom right. As soon as this loads. So I've selected Pay by Invoice. I'm going to go ahead and hit Next. I'm going to grab this first invoice here. And I'm going to select Partial. And click Next. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and input a payment amount here. Just click this pencil. It should allow you to go ahead and enter in the $1,500 that we're going to apply. But next, you should only see that one credit card. We'll go ahead and hit that nickname. And as you see, you do have the option here for some ACH or another credit card. Credit cards, payment methods, and payment transactions are all set up part of Salesforce Billing. Salesforce has already provided us these orgs with that all set up in the background. So it makes this process pretty seamless. A lot of what we as consultants would do in the background, right? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Pay Now. Should get a success dialog pop up. Perfect. We're going to go ahead and return to the account. I should see a payment already applied to one of my invoices. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that payment and we'll go to that specific invoice. We should note that the balance has been reduced by that $1,500 that we applied earlier. There's some automation also around payments. You can definitely set up payment runs similar to your payments, your invoice schedulers to generate those payments for any of those customers where you already have token information that can be stored in Salesforce and then used through your payment gateway. All right, so exercise 5. Just to quickly recap where we've gone, how we've gotten here. We started with the products. We talked about the ability to invoice products, some tax rules around really, is it going to be taxed? Is it not going to be taxed? Anything further around maybe tax, if you wanted particular accounts that weren't going to be taxed, Salesforce provides you that flexibility for that too. Revenue recognition rules, whether we're going to recognize, how we're going to be distributing that revenue. Is it going to be point in time? Is it going to be ratable? Our billing frequencies, right? Monthly, advanced. And then we've gone into now creating, we went through the Salesforce CPQ portion. We've created our quote. We've gotten to our order. We've invoiced that order. And now we've partially made a payment towards one of these invoices. So in this next step, our Ohana Inc. company, they've struggled with audits, not being able to document a lot of, any credit situations where they might have, a disgruntled customer based on maybe an implementation went wrong, or perhaps, the invoice information came in late, what have you. They would love to be able to set up an approval process around creating credit memos, so that way it can be a little bit more seamless. And again, provide us that flexibility to be all on one platform. So I'm going to go into our credit center, which you'll find on the account. So I'm going to just go ahead and trail back to our account here, 123 warehousing. And just to prove I don't have any credit notes yet created. So now I'll go through my credit center just along with you all, just like we would. And we're going to go ahead and credit an invoice here. I'll go ahead and click next. We're going to specify that same invoice. You should see the balance of that invoice, any credits that may have already been applied, payments, and total, if so I'm going to go ahead and hit next. For this particular line, I'm just going to go ahead and apply a credit. Of $100. They asked us to do the return fee. Sorry. If there's any other invoice lines that could be credited, then you would see them here available to you. For the calculator here, I'm just going to leave the tax date set to the 20th. Perfectly fine. It does say to go ahead and enter the 15th just to backdate it, just to prove that tax will be calculated correctly based on what's set up here. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit next. And please, please, please do not click post. As part of our credit memo process and submitting it for approval, it is going to be the next step here. So you should see that credit note has been created, and it's asking us to go ahead and review it before posting. So I'm going to go ahead and back to my account. You can click here, or you can click click up here on the tabs and find your account. And we should go find our credit note here in our related list. And that's that credit note 7. Okay, so for this credit note, it went ahead and created credit note lines. Those lines will be directly associated to any invoice lines that we're going to allocate them to if they needed to be, when they need to be allocated. For the purposes of this demo, we're just going to go ahead and hit submit for approval here in the top right-hand corner. Just going to put in a reason for this. Customer requested credit. And submit. So really what we're demonstrating here is that ability for Salesforce to provide some oversight. Another quality gate, like Hannah has already alluded to around orders, we're doing it here at the credit memo. so that we can, again, provide a little bit more structure around some of those finance processes that generally may have been on disparate systems previous to, right? And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Hannah.
Sweet, thank you. All right. Okay, so we're moving on to exercise 6, and we're going to be talking about reporting with Salesforce Billing. So if you go under reports, I used the More tab over here. You can either go under all favorites or all reports, and you'll see AR aging. We go into this report. This is just an example of one aging report. You can also utilize a Salesforce Billing native feature called Account Balance Snapshots, and you can set that up, and you can configure it so that you can acquire the account balances for all accounts and then pull it all into a report. But we have this AR aging report that was already made for us. So if I go and I select the cell that corresponds to the 91 plus day outstanding balance for Initech, we can see more details here. So we can see that it has an invoice that is 143 days past due, hence above the 91 plus days. Its due date was back in January, has a balance of 1,000. If we were to go and personalize this report, in the top right corner, click edit. And we're going to add collections agent for grouping rows. This collections agent field goes, it is attached to what we will look at soon after this, is the Collections and Dunning app that you can find in the App Store, and it goes along with Salesforce Billing seamlessly. A lot of AR team members for our clients really love to see a kind of dashboard and a center for them to look at it. All right, so now we have accounts with their respective collections agents. The collections agent is a field, like I said, it goes with the Collections and Dunning app that you can download from the App Exchange. There are many other features which we will dive into, but you can assign a lookup to a user for the collections agent. So if your client has a collections department and they have a whole process for that, this is a really useful tool that they can use. All right, so we're going to go down to scenario 7 and explore that Collections and Dunning app I just mentioned. So we're going to click on Dunning methods. And we're going to go into the proactive Dunning method. So depending on how extensive your client's collection process is, if it's a very small process and maybe they just send out a couple emails, you may not need the full app for this. But if they are maybe an enterprise level client and they have a strict collections process that they have in place, depending on, let's say, different types of clients or different types of customers that they might have, has a different Dunning method, then you can set those up in here. So we're looking at the proactive Dunning method. This is for early notification for customers with significant risk of non-payment or ongoing pattern of delayed collections. These are the related activities. These activities, once a collections agent is assigned to an account, these Dunning activities are assigned as tasks to those collections agents. So when they open up under their tasks, they'll be able to see, oh, I need to send an email to Initech today, or I need to call, or we need to shut off services today. So these kind of get populated as tasks once an account is put into the collections and a collections plan is made. Depending on the account, these Dunning methods are used, and these Dunning activities are assigned based on the offset days. So if they have on the 28th day of their collections plan, that's when they get a shut-off warning. 31st day, that's when they get a shut-off notification. All right, so we're going to go under accounts. This is where we're going to find Initech, which is, again, the company that had the 143-day outstanding invoice. So going here, we're going to scroll down to the collections section. You can see that there is a collections agent. I am the collections agent. Our bill to contact is Nick, and the dunning method is going to be standard. So I'm going to change collection status to in collection, and we're going to put it to today's date. Once it's done, you will see that on the activity side, this is where those tasks are populated, as I was saying, depending on what day in the collections plan they are in. Something else that I wanted to show was that there is a dashboard assigned to the collections management app that you can create a homepage in the collections management app and then assign that dashboard to the homepage. I went ahead and did set that up over in here, and this is kind of what that'll look like. So like I said, if there's a client that you have that has a collections process, but maybe it's not that extensive and they just have like some AR reminder emails that they send here and there, then they may not need this full-blown view. But if it's maybe an enterprise client that does have a very strict collections process that they follow, depending on the client, depending on the situation, then maybe this would be helpful so that they can see how much they have in collections. So this says that 1K because we had Initech is the one who is in collections right now, and they had that invoice balance of 1,000. So you can see that that's reflected here in these reports. That AR aging report that we just had personalized, you can add that to this dashboard. So again, having that kind of all-encompassing view of for a collections agent, and it kind of makes their life a bit easier. You can see the open collections plan. That's the one that we had just set up. And then depending on any task that may be assigned to you, or you can even create tasks for collections agents, or a collections agent can create their own task. Let's say like basically the equivalent of a sticky note saying, remember to call Nicholas Clark over Initech. But yeah, I think that kind of rounds out our all of our exercises.
Yeah, do you want to click on account balance snapshots?
I can absolutely do that. So like I was saying before, we can go and see account balance snapshots. This is something that, like I was saying, you can set up. And I'll just say a test. And let's say I want it for Initech. So this is where, or actually, I'm leading you down a wrong path.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
You did. Okay, but I'm okay. I don't find it. Search this way. So you need to set up like there we go. Okay. So like you would set up the invoice scheduler, you can set up the balance snapshot runs. So invoice scheduler picks up all of those order products ready to be thrown on an invoice. The balance snapshot scheduler will accumulate the balance that is owed on each account. So thinking about that account in Initech, it'll have the balance snapshot it will return saying that on this day, if we had it run today, it'll say Initech owes $1,000. So we'll say demo. We'll do start time today, and we can do it for 57. Yeah, we'll do it for 57. Right, we're going to just have it as once. There's not as much configuration on this one. This is, again, another thing that you can have run daily, monthly, or weekly, depending on how often maybe the collections department for your client is wanting this to run for. So what you can do is create an account balance snapshot report, so to kind of replace that AR aging report, and you'll be able to see how much is in each aging bucket. So you can see how much is overdue. So like Initech had 143 days past due. You could create different account balance snapshot bucket holds
Perfect.
to show. I'm waiting for that to run. But this is just another way that you can report on invoice balances that are outstanding. It kind of makes it a bit easier. And if you have it run daily and you create a report to filter it by account balance snapshot runs that have just ran today, then you kind of have that report automatically refreshing each day with new snapshot runs.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're waiting for that to run, we've reached the end of all of the exercises for within the Salesforce Billing workshop. Exercise 8 is truly what we would call like an admin exercise. It is sort of the back end, creating a field, a roll-up summary, account balance snapshots. Roll-up summaries are data heavy, and there's only so many that you can use per object. Account balance snapshots kind of provide you that flexibility to not have to go in and create something, create a new field, if you will, to have to manage and potentially, update as time goes on. So it just helps. But by all means, create the field, go through the exercise. There's a complete walkthrough there. I do definitely want to open it up for some questions that may have been held over. Bryce or Heather, if you guys want to go ahead and kind of bubble those up, and maybe we can talk about them.
I think we've tried to answer as much as we can in the chat. I think the only one that I'd add a little more flavor to, I think Madhu out there asked about consumption or usage-based billing. We aren't showing it in here, but basically both are supported. Actually, Salesforce Billing pairs with CPQ's functionality to support consumption and usage-based billing, and allows essentially what it does. It'll create usage summaries, little staging gates that basically sit there and wait for you to load usage in on a monthly basis, or whatever frequency that you assess the usage. It will go ahead and assess it. That allows you to kind of use different tiers that assess based on the billing frequency, especially if the price needs to be different. You might have tiered pricing on a monthly basis, depending on how much they actually use, to be able to handle it. So hopefully that added a little more flavor to that capability.
All right, so the account balance snapshots were able to be created from the balance snapshot scheduler, just going into that Initech company that we keep talking about. So as you can see, depending on the aging bucket, you can also change the field names to say aging bucket 1 is 1 to 30 days, and so you can label it that way. But you can see that they're arranged in different buckets. And then what you can do is create a report on these account balance snapshots, like I was saying, and you'll be able to see, just like you had in our AR aging report over here, how it's arranged in the different buckets by the collections agent and by the account. Yeah, that is I have on the exercises.
We definitely have some time left over. If we want to go ahead and open it up, Eric, Bryce, I'll take your lead on this.
Throw it to the people out there. Does anybody have any questions? I know there's a couple about the recording. We can send a recording after it. We are recording this full session. Rob, we can make sure you get the PowerPoint too. Miguel or Eric, let's just follow up with Rob, make sure that he gets the PowerPoint in the recording so we can follow along. Just let us know if you've got any questions afterwards. But did anybody have any questions either on what they saw, or just Salesforce Billing, or even Salesforce Revenue Cloud in general? So Laura Cox asked, our business may feel Salesforce reporting is not complex enough for financial operations. Any thoughts on reporting? It's two elements here. Salesforce reporting is pretty robust. It allows for quite a lot of basically data handling from a single object, and the related relationships essentially mimic a lot of complexity. We can do filtered cross-report structures. So there's definitely a lot that you can do with Salesforce reporting. If there are areas that you feel that Salesforce reporting just can't handle it, I know Salesforce also has a little bit more analytic structures or Tableau essentially that can basically take not only the data structure within Salesforce, but even external data sources and put it together in almost any possible way that you can think of. So we do handle, just to kind of give a spread for the finance guys out there, on top of Salesforce and Salesforce Billing, needing to structure things for, I guess, the financial journals and revenue recognition, and especially with ASC 606 compliance and being able to forecast things out. We do have quite a rich history of being able to see that. I know I'm kind of trying to forecast what your question might be, Laura, but we also do see kind of not just kind of for a unique or individual cell, but we do see reporting requests that say, show me the difference between what a net new line is and an add-on or a reduction or a cancellation, and that kind of classification, which is very possible with the way that we see CPQ and billing put together. And one of the reasons that we do see a lot of finance members really perk up to the idea of having it all together in one system rather than having kind of a downstream billing system or downstream ERP system almost just take everything in as quote unquote net new. So they miss a lot of that classification. Yuva, I don't know if you'll know this one. Yogesh out here is asking for I guess some of the enhancements in the pipeline. There's always a lot coming with I guess just Revenue Cloud in general. I don't know if there's anything specifically around billing, or whether Yuva can share any. I'm sure Dreamforce is going to be a really fun journey this year, but I do know, and you guys, this is all public knowledge, so you guys can see, but Revenue Cloud has had kind of an enhancement lately that impacts both CPQ and billing as it relates to the Salesforce contracts, which is CLM functionality now coming into Revenue Cloud, and I think Omni Studio that's coming up as well. And Clara, we don't have another scheduled workshop coming up. We had planned on trying to do one in a few more months, so stay tuned. You can absolutely follow us at Kavaliro on LinkedIn. We'll definitely be blasting it out and posting when we do the next one.
Valentina, I see your question about is it possible to use Salesforce Billing without CPQ and without order? No, it is not possible. Sometimes the client will not necessarily need the selling capabilities of CPQ, but CPQ is kind of one of the support beams for billing and does have to be in there and turned on. And yes, billing does also heavily rely on the order. Like I was saying, it's almost a source of truth for how billing is going to continue on.
Maybe to add a slight clarification, because I think Valentina, I know what you're asking, and Hannah's actually working on one of these projects right now. CPQ absolutely has to be installed in the system, but it doesn't have to be used. The order and the order products, so we call it multi-cloud billing, but we can actually work on basically inserting the order and the order products through some mechanism, whether it's through integration, whether it's manually, however you want, and billing can actually function without CPQ. The only caveat to it is you also essentially need to, in those amendment scenarios, whatever system is feeding that data, you'll need to make sure that you accommodate for the amendments and the renewals if you want it to perform in a very, very similar manner. But otherwise, there are help articles that go over kind of the standalone pieces to it and being able to do reductions and being able to do amendments and the nuances to it. But it is absolutely possible, and we do see it. Including usage in those scenarios that doesn't come from CPQ.
Working on one of those right now. That's awesome, Laura. CPQ helps. Looks like billing can bring similar benefits, definitely.
Crispin has a question here, and Crispin is definitely not. Oh, thank you, Eva. Crispin, question is definitely not too specific. We can handle pretty much any questions, but Salesforce Billing handles discounts over time in different ways. It really just depends on how you want to set it up. So oftentimes, if we have something from CPQ coming over, we might see annual price increases. We might see MDQ is basically structurally the line gets broken out so that you can have different quantities or different times or different discounts or even different pricing altogether over the entire period or the entire term. There's also flexibility that we have on the Salesforce Billing side. I don't think we highlighted it today, but it's called an invoice plan. And it basically allows you to downstream of sales activity, be able to schedule these plans out. And it's not necessarily discounting, because discounting is a sales functionality, but we can take the amount of the billing and we can change it in stage gates over time. So you can program something in that says, I want to invoice $2,000 or 20% amount percent, however you want to do it immediately. And then I want to build in a 7-day stop or a 30-day stop or a 29-day stop, and then offset essentially the first invoice from the second invoice to the third invoice to the fourth invoice, and then remaining balance is an option there. So you've got a lot of flexibility on creating almost an invoice plan to enact a lot of these different types of things. So it depends on whether you want to solve it from the CPQ side or the sales side, and whether you want to do it from the billing side.
And those invoice plans, if you've ever heard of like if you have project-based products and you want to do like a milestone billing scenario, then those invoice plans are also very helpful in those cases. In a case where it's like we pay 30% up front, after 2 months, you pay another 30%, and then you say you pay the rest after another 2 to 3 months. So you can also do that as well.
Getting a lot more questions now. So I'll try to rapid fire through some of these. Valentina, there isn't any pre-built QuickBook integrations, and that's because there's a million vendors out there that have, depending on how you have QuickBooks, depending whether it's online version or not, they have different connectors to them. They're usually paid connectors, but they're relatively cheap. We've implemented a couple of different ones. So depending on whether you want, to go with a Del Boomi or a MuleSoft or a Jitterbit or something really, really strong, or whether you want to go with like something like a SyncQ that has a very, very quick built out connector between the two environments. It's really not that difficult to do it. Usually when we do billing implementations, people start out with more of an export import model where they're just trying to take the data structure and put it in. In terms of consolidating multiple lines for each product that are created with MDQ, we don't typically consolidate the lines together, not on the billing side. They're maintained in pretty much the similar fashion, so that each one can individually be picked up and billed for the right amount at the right time in its multi-year or multi-segment journey. And that's the piece. When we do look at consolidation, or the reasons that we want to consolidate, it usually comes down to the presentation, where we do have a lot of flexibility in consolidating lines across the presentation, so it looks like a single line to the customer facing, even though the data structure itself is in Salesforce, is presented in a way to power billing properly. And I think I'll take one more. Tara, the implementation time average, that's a really difficult question. It really comes down to kind of the use case and what's being implemented. Salesforce Billing can be implemented to do very simply just generating invoice data, but it can also generate the invoice data. It can handle collections and dunning reporting. It can handle payments and full integration into a payment gateway. And it can even be set up all the way to process revenue recognition and journal entries, just stopping short of kind of full AR that would pass to the ERP. Our fastest project was probably 11 weeks long. And we've got projects for giant enterprise customers that have gone on over a year. I would probably say the average that we look at is probably between 3 to 4 months, and most of that is having a good about a month strong discovery phase, having some good implementation sprints, doing a very good testing cycle before going live, and making sure that when you guys cut over, you guys are functionally ready to take over. The team is there, it's been verified, and that's usually what I would say is the minimum comfortable implementation. We do not have a New York. Kavaliro does not have a New York office. Salesforce has a New York office. They've got pretty much offices in every major city, Ravi. But we do happen to be in New York quite often, and I will actually be there in about 3 weeks myself if you'd like to meet up. But we do have our major headquarters in Orlando, and then most of our consultants are spread over, I'd say mostly the central and East Coast, but we do have presence all over the US. Kavaliro itself has 6 or 7 major offices. I know we've got one in Colorado. We've got some in California. We've got some in Orlando, in Charlotte, just many locations in general. Okay, has anybody gotten to Greg's question yet? I don't think so.
Yeah, they did.
Okay, perfect. And Heather, I know Heather answered this for Tara, but our firm itself actually handles pretty much anything and everything to do with Revenue Cloud. We do managed services, we do offer implementations, we do health checks, we do advisory. I don't think we highlighted this, but this is pretty unique service. We actually serve as chaperones for new partners coming in to do Salesforce billing as well. So there are often actually partners that are trying to enter our area of expertise, trying to get trained up, and we offer for Salesforce kind of the ability to say they're going to do the project, the client will never see us, but you need to make sure that it's going to go well. So we kind of oversee the other partners. We're pretty flexible in our offerings. We also have a workforce solutions division to help staff internally any resources you may need in Salesforce as well. If you do have any questions you didn't think of afterwards, feel free to shoot us an email. Both Eric and Miguel, I believe both of these members have been probably sending you emails throughout. So if you need to get a hold of somebody, feel free. I will personally put my own email in here if you guys have follow-up questions, especially if you haven't been reached out to or didn't get the deck and you just need somebody to make sure that you do.
Guys, thank you, everyone. From my part, it was a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this was insightful. Definitely look forward to connecting with you all, and definitely stay in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.